part and parcel of the Supreme, who is eternal bliss and knowledge, and he realizes that somehow or other he is entrapped in the material conception of life. In his pure state of existence, he is meant to dovetail his activities in devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. He therefore engages himself in the activities of Krishna consciousness and becomes naturally unattached to the activities of the material senses, which are all circumstantial and temporary. He knows that his material condition of life is under the supreme control of the Lord. Consequently, he is not disturbed by all kinds of material reactions, which he considers to be the mercy of the Lord. According to Srimad Bhagavatam, one who knows the absolute truth in three different features, namely Brahman, Paramatma, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is called Tattvavit, for he knows also his own factual position in relationship with the Supreme. Tattvavitu mahabaho gunakarma vibhagayo guna guneshu vartanta iti madvana sajjate. One who is in knowledge of the absolute truth, O mighty armed, does not engage himself in the senses and sense gratification, knowing well the differences between work in devotion and work for fruitive results. So, we have immediately a distinction being made between a person who is in knowledge and a person who has no knowledge. A person in knowledge is somebody who knows things as they are. What is to be known? Well, the first and foremost important thing to be known is my own identity, what I am. One must know what he is and what he is not. What I am a pure spirit soul, a part and parcel of Krishna. And what I am not is this body, a product of the material world. A person in knowledge is one who knows what he is and what he is not. A person in illusion is one who thinks he knows what he is, but in fact, he knows what he is not. A person in ignorance thinks that he knows everything. This is one of the symptoms of ignorance. He thinks everything's fine, everything's all right, I have full knowledge, I have everything together, there is not many problems, just a few. Those I will also conquer. But a person in knowledge knows that here I am in the material world, therefore I've got a big problem. And that problem requires a lot of effort to overcome. Here I am in the material world, and I am living in a material body, but I don't belong here. I'm only here temporarily, for some short period of time, in order to somehow or another gain some satisfaction of my desires. Everybody here in this material world is filled with desires. In fact, desire is the overriding feature of the material world. Everybody in the material world is full of desire. We want so many things. Some want like this, some want like that. We may have different forms of desire, but everybody in the material world is filled with some kind of a desire or another. That is just simply the nature of the material world. That's why we're here. We come to this world to fulfill desires. So, a person in knowledge, he knows, although he has desire, that these desires are actually a product of the material body, a product of the material nature. They are not, in fact, the natural characteristic of my spiritual nature. He knows that now here I am in the material nature, and therefore I am filled with material desire. but in fact my nature is spiritual, and I can develop my spiritual desires in a spiritual fashion, and this will bring me spiritual enlightenment. Therefore, a person who is living within the spiritual energy, a man in knowledge, a person who is beyond the darkness of the material energy, is one who is fully convinced that he is not this body, that he is a pure spirit soul, and that he is meant to go back home, back to Godhead, which is the perfection of his life. So, there are two classes of men. Those who know what they are, and those who don't. Those who have knowledge, and those who are devoid of knowledge. We find these classes are spread throughout the society. Some, they know they're not this body. Now, of those who know that they are not this body, that they are spirit soul, those classes are still subdivided further. There are those who know they are not this body, but cannot act on that platform. That knowledge is simply something in their mind, but they don't have any fixed realization of this. They simply know it. That's like they've heard it. But they can't act on that platform because they're not sufficiently purified. They have knowledge, but that knowledge is not complete or sufficient. So this is the problem. In the material world, we find that even a man may have knowledge, but he still cannot act on that knowledge due to what? Intense attachment to the material body. Even a person may know, I am not this body, but still he may not have any strength to overcome the attachments to this body, and he may not be able to give up material entanglement. This kind of person is unfortunate, and he himself also feels very disturbed at his own condition. Such persons, when they are very disturbed by this and lamenting why I must be entangled in this material body, why must I be completely overwhelmed by the various forms of sensual desires, why must I act to satisfy these desires even though I don't want to? After a while, such a person may actually become a little sincere. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, after many, many births and deaths, a wise man may actually develop knowledge. After many births and deaths, somebody who has some knowledge, but who is not acting on that platform, may actually develop real knowledge. Bahunam janmanam ante jnanavam mam prapajita. After many births and deaths, one who is in knowledge finally may get himself to the point where he can surrender to Krishna. Jnanavam mam prapajita. Jnanavam. When he actually gets knowledge, then the natural consequence is that he surrenders to Krishna. Why? Vasudeva sarvam iti. He knows that Vasudeva, or Krishna, is everything. He begins to get a factual realization that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is all there is in this whole manifestation. He simply comes to understand that Krishna is simply everything. Now that means after quite some time, after many births and deaths. After all, this development of knowledge is not something that happens immediately. It is something which develops over many lifetimes. one can be struggling to attain this transcendental knowledge over many lifetimes. He can be trying in many, many different ways each lifetime. And maybe he will attain some small amount of understanding in one lifetime. Then the next lifetime, he will come to understand a little more. Then the next lifetime, he will come to understand a little more. In fact, in each lifetime, he will be attempting to come to the point of knowledge more and more. Naturally, you may have seen such persons. They naturally search for knowledge. Sometimes we find a person from birth is eager to get transcendental knowledge. And then sometimes we may see a person, even if he is meant, or even if he is pushed to get transcendental knowledge, doesn't care at all. We see that this is sometimes a position of birth. We can give an example, although we're not terribly proud of it. But sometimes children are born in the Krishna consciousness movement who are not at all interested in transcendental knowledge. Somehow, perhaps they took birth within Krishna consciousness movement, but they're not interested. And then at other times we find another child born within Krishna consciousness, or even nearby Krishna consciousness, or even outside Krishna consciousness, may from his very birth have spontaneous attraction to transcendental knowledge. We see some, as soon as they're able to understand anything, want to understand about Krishna. And sometimes we have seen that such persons have connection with Krishna consciousness through many lifetimes. Through many lifetimes, they have been trying to become Krishna conscious. And therefore, from their birth, they take that divine consciousness with them from their previous lifetimes and attempt again, once again in this lifetime, to understand Krishna. In fact, I think we might be justified in saying that all of you who are interested in Krishna consciousness now might have been interested in Krishna consciousness in a previous lifetime, but just did not have a chance to progress too far. Generally, this is what is happening, that one becomes attracted again to that which he was naturally attracted to in previous lifetimes as well. It's like a continuum. There's a verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam which explains about this continuum. It says, you can understand the past and future lifetimes of a person in the same way that you can understand the past and the future spring. Now we are in the middle of winter, but within 4 months, spring will be manifested. Now, we do not know what that spring will be like, but we have a very good idea, because most likely it will be just like the previous spring, with very little difference. There will be similarity of plants. All the bushes and plants will grow again, leaves very nicely, as they did before. Flowers will bloom. Grasses will grow. Because according to the previous manifestation, the present manifestation comes. And similarly, we can even predict the future manifestation of spring from the present. So similarly, all of the basic qualities and characteristics which we have within ourselves will manifest in future lifetimes in basically the same way. Those qualities and characteristics which we had in the past also have manifested in this lifetime. We're not that much different just perhaps last lifetime we were in the body of a woman. This lifetime we're in the body of a man. And certainly these types of bodies make differences. There's no doubt about it. But the basic mentality is the same. So we find that there is definitely a similarity between what we were doing in the past and what we will be doing in the future. Because there's a basic similarity there, according to our quality, according to our nature. So, one can understand that if one is searching for knowledge this lifetime, that he was also searching for knowledge last lifetime. After all, the search for knowledge does not just start all of a sudden like that. It is a gradual development over long periods of time. Actually, it is stated how the living entity gradually progresses up to the point of being interested in transcendental knowledge. And the description goes like this. There are impious persons, but above them are pious persons. Of the pious persons, there are 4 kinds of pious persons. They are described as follows. Those who are suffering and looking towards the Supreme for satisfaction of their suffering. Those who are in need of money and are looking towards the Supreme in order to satisfy their craving for money. Those that are curious and who are looking towards the Supreme to satisfy their curiosity. And those who are searching for knowledge, who look towards the Supreme to find out the topmost knowledge. So, when one may start off in this lower platform, he's suffering, in a suffering condition. And he wants to get free from suffering, so he prays to God, please help me get free from suffering. But due to the fact that he is praying to the Supreme, he's gradually making advancement. So then, when he takes birth again in some future lifetime, he will take birth as a person who is eager for economic development. Though he is still pious, he wants to enjoy the fruits of his economic development and enjoy sense gratification because of it. So he prays to God, oh God, give me money, give me wealth, give me success. But because he's praying to the Supreme, he is advancing. And in some future lifetime, he may take birth as one who is curious, one who is looking for satisfaction of his curiosity. He's wondering about this, wondering about that. And when he prays to the Lord, he's looking for various answers to his curiosity. But not specifically because he's looking for knowledge, because that's the more advanced platform that comes. When one starts to just question, who am I? What am I doing here? What is the goal of life? And he accepts that knowledge and acts on it to progress in spiritual life. This is quite a long procession or progression. It takes quite some time. It is not that this advancement from the lowest class to the highest class will come very quickly. In fact, it will take quite some time in order to develop these upper or higher understandings. That I am not this body, I am a spirit soul, a part and parcel of the Supreme. So, when one factually comes to this point, when one factually gets to this realization, then he is known as a great soul. But when that person who knows he's not his body, he's part and parcel of Krishna, actually understands the position of Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as the supreme source of everything, then that person is factually understood to be in knowledge. Factual knowledge means that one knows full well what he is, what he is meant to be, that he is the servant of the Supreme, that Krishna is the Lord, he is simply, we, the living entity, are simply the servants. And he acts and engages in that devotional service with dedication. Such a person is advancing rapidly towards the spiritual sky. So, our Krishna consciousness movement is meant to give all of those who are still within the lower stages of advancement the opportunity to factually come to the highest stage of advancement. In other words, we want to give people the opportunity to surrender to Krishna. We want to give people the factual means by which we may develop our natural constitutional love for the Supreme Lord. We all have this love, this loving propensity by nature, but it has been covered over by the various entangling conditions of this body, this material energy. We're very much covered by the body. The body is such an entangling thing. Just think about it. Here we are. We're not this body. But who can understand it? Because we're stuck in it. It seems to be us. It looks just like us, no? It feels like us. But what does it feel like? It feels like a hand. But this is my hand. There's no doubt about it. But it's not me. All of these conceptions that I have, that this is me, these are all illusory. Factually, I'm spirit soul. I'm different than this. And I will see this clearly at death. When I leave this body, when I start to go away from this body towards another body, wherever that may be, I see clearly what I'm leaving. But I have no choice. I cannot remain within it. But isn't it wonderful how although we are not our bodies, it is so clear to us that we are right now. This is Krishna's extraordinary mercy in the form of Maya. Maya means Krishna's bewildering potency. Krishna's bewildering potency. It is so fabulous. This bewildering potency is really marvelous. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Daivihi esha gunamayi mama maya durachaya. This divine energy of mine is very difficult to overcome. It is Krishna's bewildering potency. It is very difficult to overcome. Practically no one can overcome this bewildering potency of Krishna because he's, as he says, it's my energy. And being that it's his energy, it is extremely difficult to overcome. Now, if you were putting somebody else in illusion by bewildering him somehow, well, it wouldn't be that difficult for him to overcome it. He would just have to realize what you were doing, and then he wouldn't be disturbed any longer. But Krishna is so expert. He puts us all in illusion, but there's no possibility of us even understanding or getting out of it on our own. We just can't see it. But when this illusion is explained in great detail by Krishna, by his representatives through the Vedic literatures, then it becomes possible to understand the nature of illusion. And once you understand the nature of illusion, then one can get out of illusion. That is very possible. But so long as one has not understood the nature of illusion, then it is almost impossible to get out of illusion. You must understand it clearly. Then you can get out of it. Otherwise, you'll be in it and not even know it. The worst thing is to not even know it. One who's in illusion but knows it is in a much better condition than those who don't know it. Because those who don't know it, they think everything's fine. Those who have no idea, they think it's all wonderful. Everything's great. Ignorance is bliss. The more you don't know, the more you think how nice it is. But the more you know, then you start getting in trouble. Because you know that it's not right, it's not good, and I should be doing more. Sometimes people, they're very blissful in their ignorance. It's like if you ask them, are you happy? They go, oh yes, I'm very happy. But what is that happiness? That's like the happiness of the goat who's about to go to slaughter. Prabhupada has given the example that when they are slaughtering the animals, they have the wooden planks and they bring them out one after another. So the goats are all put together. And sometimes the she-goats and he-goats are together. And they are thinking, what a marvelous opportunity. Here we are, all together here. How cozy. So they start having sex life right there in the ramps, not realizing that within a few moments their head will be cut off. This is the happiness of the animalistic class. It seems to be all fine. Everything's wonderful. And then all of a sudden, chop, what happened? This is the way in which we find ignorance strikes. One may be in ignorance and thinking everything's wonderful. And then all of a sudden, oh, how terrible everything becomes. It is like that in the material world. Whereas one who's in knowledge knows that yes, it may be all right now for a little while, but for sure it's not going to stay that way. If it's good, for sure it's not going to stay good. And if it gets bad, for sure it's not going to stay bad. It's always going to change. There's nothing as certain as change. Whatever you think things are, they will become something else rather quickly afterwards. So, all of this leads us to believe or understand, or can lead us, or should lead us to believe or understand, that knowledge brings about with it a certain amount of responsibility, and that brings with it a certain amount of trouble. But that brings gradually the goal of becoming Krishna conscious, which is very blissful. It's like in the Bhagavad Gita, in the 18th chapter, description of the kinds of happiness which are derived from the modes of material nature. 3 modes of nature: goodness, passion, and ignorance. So, there are also happinesses according to each of these modes of nature. There's also food according to the modes of nature. There's also destinations, knowledge, all kinds of things. Each one may be specified within a particular mode of nature. So, happiness is also one of these qualities, which may be divided into the modes of nature. And that happiness is understood as follows. The happiness which is normally acceptable by the materialists is that which is very good in the beginning, just like nectar. But in the end, it turns to poison. That is happiness in the mode of passion. It's like something may seem very nice in the beginning, but in the end it becomes just like poison. Just like, for instance, you drink liquor. In the beginning, it seems very nice. I suppose it tastes good, otherwise people wouldn't take it. And it's supposed to be nice. As you can see, I'm not terribly experienced. So then, after a while, then one starts to get drunk. So, he is thinking everything's so nice. But actually, he's completely becoming a fool. He can't see properly. He can't talk properly. If he tries to do anything, he falls down. He thinks it's all wonderful. But actually it's just, he's completely finished. And because of this, he's getting pains in the liver and his brain is rotting and all kinds of blood problems are coming. Physical problems are there. Scientific studies have shown how dangerous it is to the body. So in the beginning, it seems just like nectar, but at the end, it's complete poison. A more obvious example is cigarette smoking, which seems to be so nice. Although for the life of me, I've never been able to figure out what's nice about cigarette smoking. You blow in hot smoke, clogs up the lungs, completely finishes the whole body, makes your brain dull. But they think how nice it is. So they go on smoking cigarettes, thinking how wonderful. And then later on you get lung cancer and they cut your body to pieces and you die. So far, in my parents' family, on one side, these are Italian families, so you can understand. On one side, there were 13 children, and on the other side, there were 10 children. So, I had 26 aunts and uncles on one side, and 20 aunts and uncles on the other side. Now, on one side, they're all smoking cigarettes continuously. So far, I have lost 5 aunts or uncles to horrible cancer, which cut out most of their bodies and left them so miserable that everybody else in the family gave up smoking cigarettes completely. They're all scared to death, literally. But just see the nature of the mode of passion. In the beginning, everything seems to be very nice. You just go on smoking the cigarettes and drinking the whiskeys and taking more and more meat. But in the end, the result becomes horrifying. The diseases which may come from these things. Now they are finding that meat eating causes cancer. Formerly, we could only guess that it did. But now it is scientific study, absolutely it does. It is a direct cause for various forms of intestinal cancers. And they're suspecting other cancers as well. So we can see, in the beginning everybody thinks this is just like nectar. But in the end, it turns to poison, as one has to suffer horrible diseases. Nowadays, horrible disease at the end of life is more the rule than anything else. It is very rare. You will find old people dying peacefully and naturally in a halfway decent condition. Nowadays, so many terrible things happen. So, mode of goodness is different. In the mode of goodness, in the beginning, it seems like poison. But in the end, it turns to nectar. In the beginning, it seems like poison. Just like in our Krishna consciousness movement. We are doing things within the mode of goodness. So we are very nicely rising early in the morning and taking a bath. Now, I remember this much from materialistic life, although it was quite some time ago, that there is no question in the world of getting up in the morning and taking a bath. I mean, that was about the last thing you could think of doing when you got up in the morning. So if somebody tells you, you get up in the morning early, before 4, and take a bath, you think, what? And then he tells you, don't use hot water. Go, what? Oh no! This is completely poison! I'll never do this. So, but all the devotees in the beginning, they may have thought like that. I can't even remember what I thought when they first told me this. I might have thought it was highly strange. I don't remember. What did you think? Ridiculous. So everybody thinks the same thing. I mean, some people don't take bath but one day a week. And you got to take one every morning. And not only in the morning, but in the evening too. Now that you've all firmly gotten the point about the bath. But every devotee will tell you, after a short time, perhaps even 1 week, you get so attached to getting up and taking a bath that you could never possibly conceive of getting up without taking a bath. 1 week maybe, and you're completely convinced. Because in the beginning, it may seem like poison. But after a while, one starts feeling so good that the comparison is intolerable. He couldn't tolerate not taking a bath. It's like we have our beads. And every day, we are chanting one minimum 16 rounds on our beads. 16 times around on these beads. Minimum. Every day. So in the beginning, one may think, 16 times around? And on each bead you chant Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And all of that was one bead, and that's only one of 108, and you've got to do that 16 times? Wow! One thinks, this is just like poison. Having to again and again and again and again say over and over and over and over, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So one may think like that. But after a very short period of time, again, maybe 1 week, one couldn't even possibly consider living a day without chanting 16 rounds of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. That is the proof that these activities are in the mode of goodness. In the beginning, the activity seems to be very, very hard. But in the end, the activity seems to be just like nectar. So that is the difference between a materialist and a spiritualist. A materialist always acts in the mode of passion, always interested in doing things which are giving quick satisfaction, easy enjoyment. Whereas a spiritualist is eager to act in the mode of goodness, things which may be a little bit more difficult in the beginning, but which in the end give one actual satisfaction. That is Krishna consciousness process. It may seem to be a little austerity in the beginning, but it's not. It is not difficult to do. Not a difficult process. It's an easy process. And it is simply requiring a little bit of a change of the understanding of how we do things or what we do. But basically, we are simply living our lives for the satisfaction of Krishna. Not that we just satisfy Krishna and that's the end of our existence. No. Because when Krishna is satisfied, we become satisfied too. We are satisfied when Krishna is satisfied. So if we can simply satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then we also become very satisfied. Just like if you offer water to the leaves and branches of a tree, you'll not be very satisfied. The tree won't be very satisfied. You have to put it to the root of the tree. Then all the leaves and branches become satisfied. So if we offer water to the root of existence, Krishna, then we become satisfied because we are the extensions coming from Krishna. We are his expansions, separated expansions, tiny little portions of Krishna. We're called Vivinamshas. We are part of Krishna, but we are separated from Krishna. Vivina. Vivina means separated. We are not now in connection with Krishna because we have forgotten our relationship with Krishna. This is illusion. Therefore, this Krishna consciousness movement is meant to help us remember the relationship, to make us come again in connection with Krishna. And if we can simply connect ourselves with Krishna, that is the perfection of life. So therefore, everybody should try to develop his relationship with Krishna. For by such development of relationship, one will develop the perfection of his life. So we are hoping that everybody can try to become Krishna conscious more and more. Try to develop one's spiritual life more and more. Try to surrender to Krishna and serve him more and more. And above all, always chant Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And this will perfect the love. So if there are any questions from our guests, I'd be glad to try to answer. Yes.
Quel rosario lì che dite, come si chiama?
Già.
Che pregate così. Voi riuscite a essere concentrati su Krishna? Sempre il pensiero concentrato su Krishna?
If by chanting Hare Krishna and Japa we are able to concentrate our mind on Krishna.
You know that simply thinking about something is much more difficult to concentrate on that thing than through sound vibration. Sound vibration is much more powerful than thought. For something you talk about all the time, you also tend to think about all the time. The mind follows the tongue. Of course, the tongue also follows the mind, but not directly and always. So you can always force the mind to follow the tongue if you want. So if you're chanting Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, and the mind naturally becomes controlled by the sound vibration.
Grazie. Sì, perché penso che la cosa più difficile è proprio controllare il pensiero, la cosa più difficile.
She thinks that controlling the thought is the most difficult thing.
Yeah. The control of the tongue is the number one element in the control of the senses. it is described in Jiva Goswami's Upadeshamrita, verse number 1. Vacha vegam manasa krodha vegam jiva vegam udarupashta vegam. Vacha vega. Vacha refers to the words, and jiva refers to the tongue's propensity to eat. So control of the tongue means two things: control over speech and control over eating propensity. So the tongue, although one thing, does two very important sensual activities. And therefore it is the most difficult object, or the most difficult organ to control in the whole body. And if one can control the tongue, then practically everything else is an easy thing to control.
Il significato di compassione.
What it means to be compassionate.
Compassion, in the spiritual sense, means that you are capable of giving to others Krishna. You are capable of relieving them from their material bondage. That's real compassion. You see them as suffering in the material world, and you want to help them get freed from the suffering condition. This is actual compassion. And therefore you will give them the Hare Krishna mantra, or you'll give them some transcendental literature, or you will get them to become Krishna conscious somehow. That's real compassion. False compassion is that somebody is saying, for instance, "No, I want to stay in the material world." And you go, "Okay, you should do like that." Just simply going along with whatever someone says. That's a false compassion. Real compassion is you will try to arrange anything to get these people to become Krishna conscious. It's just like the example is given of the drowning man who's drowning in the lake or something. So you dive into the water to save him, but all you bring back is his clothes. He's still drowning, finished, but you brought back his clothes to the bank of the lake or river. So, if you just save somebody's body, what is the use? It's like saving the clothes of the drowning man. The soul within, that's the point. So real compassion means you work on the platform of the soul within, not the body.
Potrebbe spiegarmi perché la relazione tra le gopi e Krishna è la più alta?
Can you explain why the relationship between Krishna and the gopis is the most elevated?
Why? Well, because it is. Because their love for Krishna is unsurpassed. There are no better devotees of Krishna than the gopis. They are the topmost devotees of Krishna. There's nobody else in the whole creation who's as good a devotee as the gopis. Well, how do I know that? Well, I only know that because that's what it says in all these books. I suppose I will know that really well when I'm back in the spiritual sky. But then that won't help you very much, will it? Therefore, Krishna sends his devotees in this world to speak these Vedic literatures so that we may understand what is the topmost perfection of knowledge. The gopis have surrendered everything for Krishna. They keep nothing for themselves. Everything for Krishna. Even at the risk of losing home and family. They give up everything for Krishna. Therefore they're considered the topmost devotees. They keep nothing for themselves. There are many examples of that. Have you read Krishna book? It's like somebody asked me, why is Krishna blue? I said, why don't you ask him? Now, how am I supposed to answer that question? Why is Krishna blue? Does there have to be a reason? Krishna is blue because Krishna is blue. Why do you have to be white? Ugly color. Really, sometimes people, they ask like that, how am I supposed to answer? Why? Yes.
Un'altra domanda. Tante volte è difficile accettare la sofferenza degli innocenti, per esempio, e molte sono tentate di dire che Dio è ingiusto. E difatti è molto difficile vedere un bambino che soffre, come adesso qui da noi forse si sta ancora bene, ma negli altri paesi, le guerre, la fame, la carestia, e questi innocenti che soffrono. Che risposta mi dà?
Sometimes it's very difficult to say this.
What is the last 3 words? Okay, response.
What is your answer?
What is your answer?
About how to understand how difficult it is
To accept the suffering
suffering
of
of
the
others, innocent persons in other places.
That means God must be partial.
Okay. I can understand about 3/4 of your question. Yes, okay. So, why is it that some are suffering and some are not?
I bambini soprattutto, i piccoli,
Or children, especially children, because they're so innocent.
specialmente gli innocenti.
They're not at all innocent. They're guilty too. Why? Now I will explain. We think children are innocent. They didn't do anything to anybody. They just took their birth and here they are. But they just took their birth. But what were they before they took their birth? Yeah, just like now, you are doing so many things. Now you are building up reactions. Of course, maybe you're a good person and you're not building up so many reactions. But let's say you are doing something terrible to other persons. Yeah. It's like there are criminals who steal and rob and kill, and they never get caught by the police. So in this lifetime, they're living good, and they think everything's great, no problem. What do we care about the world? So next lifetime, when they take birth, immediately the reactions from their previous lifetime start to hit them. So even though they're little babies and you think, oh, how cute, how innocent, they're not at all innocent. They're guilty because they have been acting in previous lifetimes. And that karma has followed them into this body. And now, they are stuck with that karma, even though they are little children. And boom, they get hit with it. And they are suffering. Now nobody can understand why, but that's because they cannot see the previous activities they did. And were they able to see the previous activities, then they would also understand why they are suffering.
Ma noi abbiamo il dovere di aiutarli comunque. Non è così semplicistica la cosa che perché erano cattivi adesso sono puniti. Noi dobbiamo aiutarli questi sofferenti. È il nostro obbligo aiutarli.
Our duty is to help them. It's not that because they are guilty we don't have to help them. Our duty is to help this. So.
Yes, we like to help them by giving them Hare Krishna mantra and spiritual knowledge, because that's real help. We also like to give them prashadam. Therefore, one of the main programs in the Krishna consciousness movement everywhere is to give prashadam. We have had many very successful programs where all others have failed. Even during the great floods in Bengal, we were the only ones in the whole state giving out food to all the peoples. We had our boats. The others, where they had only trucks, we had boats. and we were able to feed all thousands and thousands of people. So it is not that we don't do anything, but we don't do foolish things. Just like the world felt so much compassion for the people of Ethiopia. So they sent hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars of aid there. But how much of it did the people get? Extremely little. It was mainly stolen by the government. Proven fact. It's like, I know one of my disciples, she is very big in this business, and she knows, she's also an actress, so she knows the big people in Germany. So one man was staking his whole career on backing this Ethiopian relief. And afterwards it was discovered that almost nothing of the some 300 or 400 million marks that he collected went to people. And he was completely finished because of it. Completely finished. So what is the use? And in fact, I have seen studies done by independent research organizations which absolutely guarantee that 95% of the money you give will never leave the country in which you give it. It will be used for the administration of the funds. And the 5% that does leave, of that, 95% of that will be for sure used up in the country where it is received in administration of the funds. We even inquired once here in Switzerland, if we were to go around and collect, this is just for our information to understand the percentages, if we were to go out and collect for some organization, how much of our collection do we actually have to give to the organization? Do you know what they answered? In order to represent the organization, let's say we wanted to represent the Schweizer Rote Kreuz or something like this, right? So we would only have to give them 20% of our collection in order to go out in their name and collect in their name. 20%. And the 80% we could have kept for ourselves. How about that? You can't even begin to imagine how much money is wasted in these organizations simply pushing papers around. But when somebody gives money for a Krishna conscious project, almost 100% of it goes to where it's supposed to go. We have statistics showing we only spend 5% on administrative costs. And 95% goes where it's supposed to go. That's the complete opposite of the materialists. Because no one in this organization gets a salary. It's all free.
Chiaro.
You're not a guest. Or you're a guest?
Sì, sono nostri.
Anyway, go ahead.
Volevo sapere, rifacendoci a quello che abbiamo ascoltato all'inizio della lezione, il progresso della vita spirituale può sembrarci così lento, vita dopo vita noi possiamo essere impegnati nell'avanzamento spirituale fino a sviluppare il puro amore per Dio. Però pochi di noi possono ritenersi al punto tale da riuscire a sviluppare il puro amore per Dio in questa vita. E quindi ci potrebbe essere la prospettiva di nascere di nuovo fino a sviluppare il massimo della nostra conoscenza spirituale. Ora io vorrei sapere quale deve essere l'atteggiamento cosciente di Krishna rispetto a questa visione.
You explained in the beginning that the progress in spiritual life can also go very slow, and that you could take many lifetime to obtain the goal of life. So, qual è l'ultima parte della tua?
Allora, pochi di noi potrebbero pensare di essere ad un livello tale di avanzamento spirituale da poter giungere al puro amore per Krishna in questa stessa vita, e quindi ci si prospetta di nuovo una morte, di nuovo una nascita, fino a sviluppare puro amore per Dio. E questo è un pensiero che non è molto ottimista, no? Perché sappiamo quali possibilità e pericoli ci sono nel riprendere nascita. Io vorrei sapere quale deve essere la visione cosciente di Krishna di questo.
So most of us cannot do it in one lifetime. So only a few can do it in one lifetime. So how a devotee should think about this? That how should be the vision of the devotee, this relation?
So now, if you are a devotee, and you are devoting yourself completely to Krishna, that means you've already been through many, many lifetimes of trying. You can't just like that become a devotee. It has to be the product of many, many lifetimes of attempt, of trying to surrender, to attempt to become Krishna conscious. And then, after these many, many lifetimes, you can finally start to surrender as a full-time devotee. And when you actually become a full-time devotee, that means you're ready in this lifetime to make the final solution to the problems of life and go back home, back to God. So, just becoming a full-time devotee means you're pretty close. And the full-time devotees either have a very good chance to go back to Godhead in this lifetime or next lifetime. But pretty soon then. Now you're close. Yeah. So if you just stick to it, success can come. We hope. We pray. We request Krishna. I mean, it's not like it's guaranteed, you know. So therefore, I mean, the answer is like that, but inside we're just going, please, Krishna, please, please. Not another birth, oh no, no, no. Not squished up in a womb again, oh no, no. Coming out, pulled out, crying, whacked on the back. No more, no more. When one's got that feeling, no more, no way, then he's got a good chance. Real good chance not to come back again. But as soon as somebody thinks, come back, come on, then he's finished. You've got to really be afraid of that. And you've got a real good chance.
Nel mondo materiale ognuno ha la sua personalità, ognuno sviluppa comunque la sua personalità e ricerca eccetera, così è possibile anche nel mondo spirituale.
Ricerca cosa?
Cioè sviluppa la sua personalità, sviluppa o ricerca varie possibilità, varie conoscenze, no? È così possibile anche nel mondo spirituale di ricercare esperienze, conoscenze eccetera.
In the material body, everybody is looking for knowledge and to develop his personal individual qualities. So is it like this also in the spiritual world that one looks for knowledge and develop his own personal qualities?
In the spiritual world, all the qualities are already developed. So nobody is looking to develop them. spiritual world means everything developed fully. And then it expands from that point. It's not a question of development. It's already completely manifested. Whereas here, things are not completely manifested because the material world is endlessly mutable. It may change from this to that to the other thing. But in the spiritual world, things are not mutable like that. They are eternal. They are full in knowledge and bliss, completely developed, but ever expanding in that knowledge and bliss. In other words, you are developed to that maximum degree you can develop as your spiritual soul. There is nothing yet to be discovered. But in relationship to Krishna, there is always more to be discovered because Krishna is unlimited. And in that sense, one is always developing more knowledge about Krishna. Is that all right? You're no guest, that's for sure. No more from our guests? Last chance?
Solo i devoti di Krishna raggiungono Krishna nel mondo spirituale, cioè nella sua dimora, oppure è possibile raggiungerlo non essendo coscienti di Krishna, cioè con altre religioni?
If only the devotee of Krishna can obtain the planet of Krishna, or maybe also if one follows another religion.
So long as one is serving the Supreme, Krishna, God, under one of his bona fide names, perfectly, and has become a perfect lover of the Supreme, he will go to Krishna at the end. But he must know about the Supreme perfectly. Or by the mercy of the Lord will grant him that knowledge. Then he may also go back to Krishna. But it is not a question of religion, it is a question of realizing God. He is what he is. It is not a question of religion. You have to realize him. So it does not matter how, through what particular process, if it is bona fide process. Otherwise you can never realize him. But at the end, you've got to become Krishna conscious, no matter what so-called religion you are following. Because God is Krishna, and Krishna consciousness is realization of God. Sometimes we forget that.
I sacerdoti cristiani attualmente che tipo di coscienza danno alle persone?
The Christian priests, which kind of knowledge they are giving to the people?
I don't know. Maybe here it may be better than what they used to do in New York. There it was really bad. I was amazed, even though I was a young boy, at how little there was actually spiritual life here in these discussions. And the people in the audience also were not interested in hearing anything spiritual. Probably if the priest talked too much spiritual things, then the people would all get up and walk out. So he didn't dare speak about spiritual things. And maybe he wasn't really interested in spiritual things. That's another thing. I don't know around here, but I know where I come from. And I don't remember priests ever talking too much about God. In fact, in Sweden, of course Sweden is no example, but in Stockholm, the priests were complaining in the church that there was not enough lively discussion. So we suggested that they open up a forum of dialogue on God. And we had no idea, but this made the biggest disturbance in the history of the church. Because all of the priests started arguing. Well, some of the priests said, we can't talk about God in an open forum. And then some of them said, well, why not? We're supposed to talk about God. We're priests. And they were having a raging argument about what we had said. And this went on for about a month. Then finally they wrote us a letter back and they said, this subject is too controversial. We simply can't have a forum of discussion open to the public about God. Because it turned out they didn't even agree amongst themselves what was God. This is outrageous. Now, I've seen this many times. I mean, in Hyderabad, Hyderabad is also not the best example. But anyway, I only know these places. So anyway, in India, in Hyderabad, there's the Archbishop of Hyderabad. He's a big man down there in India. He's a big man. There are a lot of Christians in India. So we went to visit him. So we asked him if we could have a discussion about God. So then he said, God. There are many opinions about what is God. This would be an interesting discussion. He said, but I am not allowed to have it with you. He told us quite frankly, because we were Hare Krishnas. In India, the Archbishop of Hyderabad cannot talk to the Hare Krishna about God. But he said it would be very interesting because there are many opinions about what is God. It's amazing. They all have so many opinions. My uncle, he doesn't do it anymore because he's gone blind, but he used to be the one who was managing Mother Teresa's organization. So he and I had a big argument once, maybe 12 or 13 years ago, when I once went to visit my parents, and they were there. We had a very huge argument about what is God. Because he was representing the modern Catholic theological arguments about what is God. And I was saying that this has nothing to do with religion. All these arguments are simply either existentialism or Mayavadi philosophy. That God is everywhere. He has no personal form anymore. He's just everywhere. He's whatever you want him to be. They were even saying like that. God is whatever you want him to be. There were so many different opinions in the church at that time about what is God. So, because there's not such a standard of knowledge, we find things are difficult. Therefore, we present the standard knowledge. We don't speculate. You'll never find a Hare Krishna devotee who's bona fide saying, I think God's like this, or I think he's like that. Maybe, or there are different opinions. Some say like this, some say like that. You'll never find. We say, the Vedic literatures describe him this way, and this is what we accept. In fact, in Germany, the Christians, they said, this is the biggest problem we have. This is not Catholics now, these are Protestants. They say, this is the biggest problem we have with these Hare Krishnas. whenever we talk with them, they simply quote from their shastra, their scriptures. They never speculate. And they always accuse us of speculating. Every time we say something, they say, does it say that in the Bible? You are just simply speculating. And we get defeated. So this was written in a book. These Hare Krishnas are the most dangerous people because of this. So you're going to understand, we are strict because we follow what's in the books. And we know what's there and we follow it, that's all. So similarly, we respect those who quote. Not cheating and twisting knowledge left and right. If you want to give real knowledge to others, you can't give knowledge, I think, maybe, perhaps. You've got to give knowledge as it is. So that's what we are doing here with this Bhagavad Gita. We give it as it is. Not as we think it should be, not as we would like it to be, but as it is. That is what makes this knowledge potent. All right, Harikesa.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.